Hi everyone, it's Gina K, and today on Stamp TV I'm going to show you 5 fun ways to use the new Deco Foil Transfer Gel. I'm going to show you how to use it with stencils, and I'm also going to show you how you can stamp with it. Here are some of the projects that I made using the pieces that I created in today's video. I'm going to show you how to use a stencil and some of the watercolor Deco Foil. And I'm also going to show you how to do a tone-on-tone look, like in this example where I used Turquoise cardstock and some Turquoise fancy foil. Then I'm going to show you how to use a stencil, and instead of using foil to create some sparkle and shine, I used some of the Gina K Designs prismatic glitter. I'm also going to show you how to use ink to create color underneath a gelled stenciled image. And then I'm going to show you how to use the transfer gel and your stamps so that you can foil your stamped images. When you first get your Deco Foil Transfer Gel, you're going to have to remove this protective seal underneath. That just keeps it nice and fresh so that it's ready to use when you get it. You're also going to need a spatula, and I'm using one here from Ranger, but you can use any spatula that you have, even a kitchen-style spatula. I'm going to tack down this piece of Turquoise cardstock using some blue painter's tape. It's a great way to tack down cardstock without tearing it. And if you still find that it's a little too tacky, you can always just touch it to your clothing first before you put it onto your cardstock. Now I'm using a stencil by Tim Holtz. This particular one's called Lace, and it's a beautiful stencil for this technique. So now that I have it positioned where I want it, I'm going to tack this down as well with some of that blue painter's tape. Blue painter's tape is a great economical type of tape to use for these projects instead of using your more expensive pretty washi tape. So now I'm going to apply the gel. I'm just going to scoop some out onto my spatula and smooth it on, almost like I was smoothing peanut butter onto a piece of bread. Actually, it's a little bit more like the consistency of mayonnaise. So it's very thin and very easy to spread. And you just want to make sure that you have a nice thin layer on there and put all of that excess gel right back into the jar. You can use that again later. Now I'm going to remove this stencil, and I'm going to gently hold it down while I peel off these pieces of tape. I don't want the stencil to shift at all while I'm doing this process. So I just have a couple more pieces of tape here to remove, and now I'm going to pull the stencil straight up, and then you can see the beautiful design left behind. And then what I like to do is just toss my stencil into a little dish of water that I keep close by, just to keep the gel wet so that when I go to clean it, it hasn't dried onto the stencil. Now I'm going to lift that stencil up, and I'm going to put it aside to dry. Now the way you will know that it's dry is once it's dry, it will no longer look white. It will just look clear and shiny like this. So now it's time to add foil. I'm going to grab a piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to use an extra piece of cardstock inside the parchment sandwich, and that will that'll keep things nice and straight and flat, and it will also increase the pressure a bit. So I have my Turquoise cardstock and then my Turquoise fancy foil on top, and I'm going to run that through the laminator. You want to make sure you go fold side first. Once that comes out, it's going to be a little bit warm, but you can peel it right away. You don't have to wait for it to cool. And I'm going to peel this off and reveal the beautiful design underneath. I'm telling you, this gel is a game changer. When you think about all the things that you can do with a product like this, isn't that pretty, that beautiful shine? And save that piece, because that can be used with toner paper to create the reverse look. So here's the finished card that I made using that piece, and I just added one of the Foil Mates pieces from the Wedding and Anniversary collection, and I did that in Turquoise as well. So my next project is going to use craft cardstock. So this is the Gina K Designs Craft, and I've cut a piece out 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I will have all the measurements for these cards underneath the screen at Stamp TV and also in the description at YouTube. And now I am going to put this stencil on top. I love this stencil. This is another Tim Holtz stencil, and this one is called Festive. This is a great stencil for making Christmas cards, and once you start using the gel, you're going to want to make all your Christmas cards this way. So now I'm going to grab some more of that gel, and the same way I'm going to scoop some out using my spatula and then just put that thin layer on top of the stencil. You can see how nice and thin that is and smooth that's going on. It's really nice. It's not a hard product to use at all. And anything that's left on your spatula, just put back in the jar because you can use it again. Now once again, I'm going to carefully peel this tape off, making sure that my stencil does not shift during this process. And then I'm going to pull that stencil straight up and get it out of the way. That one's going right in the water too. And now I'm going to gently remove these little pieces of blue painter's tape. And then I'm going to put this piece aside to dry. But you can see all of that white is going to turn to clear. So here's the white piece, the wet piece, and then here is a version that I dried overnight. And there's no need to rush. You can make tons of these panels and just keep them around until you're ready to foil them. They don't have to be foiled within a certain amount of time. So I'm going to lay that craft cardstock down, and then I have some of this emerald watercolor Deco Foil, and I'm going to send this through the laminator. Wait till you see how pretty this combination is, the emerald watercolor on craft. So it's a little warm to the touch, but I can peel it right away, and I'm going to do that and reveal that beautiful festive design underneath. There's something about that watercolor foil that is so beautiful. Isn't that pretty? And then again, save that extra piece because you can use that on another project. Now here's a finished card I made. This uses the Holly Jolly Foil Mates by Gina K Designs and some of that beautiful fancy ribbon. My next project is one I know a lot of you have been waiting for. I'm going to show you how you can stamp using the Tranfer Gel. And the stamp that I'm using is from the Fine Feathers stamp set. This is by Claire Brennan, and I wanted to use something that's very detailed. You can see how these feathers are so detailed because I wanted to show you that you can really capture a lot of detail using this Tranfer Gel. So to begin, I have my stamp on my acrylic block, and I'm going to take a little bit of the Tranfer Gel onto a paper plate. So I'm just going to kind of put a thin layer onto a paper plate. You can always go back and add more, but I hate when it starts to dry out and I haven't used it all, so I just use little bits at a time. I'm going to use a sponge dauber to apply this, and I'm just going to pop that sponge dauber onto the Tranfer Gel and then bounce it all over my stamp. Now this is not going to give you the same exact kind of design that the foil mates would give you. The foil mates are going to give you a very crisp design. This is going to be a little bit more distressed, but still it is so beautiful. And it's a great way to make use of your stamps with the foil. And when you stamp, you want to make sure that you put a little pressure on it and then let it sit there for a second to transfer the gel from the stamp onto your cardstock. It's a little bit different than ink, so you want to give it just an extra second or two to really transfer. And you're going to find that it's a little bit sticky, so when you pull it up, make sure that you really have a good grip on it and also on the cardstock. So that's what it looks like when it's wet. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to show you how I clean my stencils and my stamps. I just have a bowl of warm soapy water that I keep off to the side, and as long as you throw your stencils and stamps right in, it's not going to harden at all. It's going to be very easy to just wipe off just with your fingers. And then just grab a piece of paper towel and you can dry that, and it will be ready for your next project. So there's not a lot of work involved. If you do let it sit and dry, it will be more difficult to get that Tranfer Gel off. Now for the stamps, I like to use a little stencil brush. You can also use an old toothbrush, but a stencil brush that's nice and kind of like coarse. And I'm just going to dip that stencil brush into some Dawn dishwashing detergent, and then I'm going to just scrub, scrub, scrub until all of that gel is off of my stamp. I've used this gel with both rubber and clear stamps, and I haven't had any problems at all getting the gel to come off of the stamps. I even let one sit for a little while, and then I went in and scrubbed it. And although it did take a little bit more work to get the gel off, it didn't ruin the stamp at all. But to make life easier, clean it as you go. Just toss it right into some water to keep it wet, and it'll just come off really, really easily. And if there's anything left, you can just scrape it off. So I don't know if you can see how clear this stamp is now, but I might just hold it up against a piece of cardstock. You might be able to see it a little bit better against something dark. So let's see what that looks like. So you can see all of the gel is gone off of that stamp, and that stamp is ready to be put away or used for another project. So now that these pieces are dry, I'm going to show you a version that I did in the Wild Lilac with the feathers. So I have Wild Lilac cardstock stamped with gel and then Wild Lilac fancy foil on top, just for something a little bit different. So let's see what this looks like. And here's the big reveal. Oh, look how pretty that is. And you can see all of the detail that you get with that. You get lots of detail. All those little feathery parts look really quite lovely. Now I did one with a leaf stamp. This was a more solid stamp, and it looks a little bit distressed when you foil it. So a solid stamp might have a little bit more texture than the actual stamp image, but it's still quite beautiful. I foiled this one in the rose gold, and this is on dark chocolate cardstock, so you can see how pretty that is. And then I have one more that I wanted to show you. I did that same leaf pattern on a piece of craft, and I wanted to try the craft with some of the rose gold deco foil as well. So that is a really interesting look. It's almost a little more tone on tone, but it's still quite different because the craft is so rustic and the foil is so wow. So you can see how pretty that looks together. And all of these pieces would make beautiful backdrops for any card project. So it's fun to try using different stamps, both solid and detailed, to see what kind of looks you can get. And you can really see that shine with that rose gold up against that dark chocolate. My next project is going to use an inking technique. So I'm going to just tape some Gina K Designs layering weight white cardstock down onto my craft mat using some of the blue painter's tape, and I'm going to tape this stencil. This is a fun stencil by Tim Holtz, and it is the Ray stencil. And then I'm going to use some of the Wild Dandelion ink, and just in a circular motion, add that Wild Dandelion ink all the way up to the top of the stencil. I am getting a little bit lighter handed as I get to the top, so it's kind of a little deeper color down near the bottom. And then you can just fill in any areas that you need to. Now I'm going to add a second color. I'm going to add some of the sweet mango to this stencil. So I've inked that up on the same sponge dauber, and I'm going to add some of that. And I'm going very light-handed here. I just want to add some color, but I don't want there to be any definite lines. I want the colors to blend. You can see how nicely the Gina K Designs inks blend together. So you don't have to worry that the inks won't blend. Okay, so now I'm going to take the stencil off, and I want to make sure that before I do the next step that I'm going to clean that stencil. So I'm just taking a piece of paper towel with a little bit of soapy water on it and just wiping that ink off. And now I'm going to add a little bit more color to this before I get to the gel part. So I'm going to grab that sponge dauber again, and I'm going to use some of the Wild Dandelion ink for this. I did rub off that sponge dauber a little bit before I tapped it on the ink. And now you can see I'm going to go over this whole thing again, but it's not going to interfere with those beautiful rays of sunshine. It's just going to fill in so there aren't those stark white areas in there. And that gives it more of an overall sunny look. And now I'm going to grab my stencil again, because this is where the fun with the gel begins. So I'm going to lay that stencil exactly where I had it when I added the color, and it'll be very easy to see and very easy to line up. I'm going to put a little bit more blue painter's tape on the sides and make sure that this is nice and secure so that it doesn't shift at all. And then I'm going to grab some of that gel. So I'm going to grab my palette knife and I'm going to spread that gel all over the surface of that stencil. Now once you've got all of that gel on there, you want to do the same thing again. You want to gently remove that blue painter's tape, holding the stencil down as you go so that nothing shifts. And when you first see this, it's not going to look like much. It's going to look like, oh, why did you cover all of the beautiful color? But remember, the gel goes on white, and once it dries, it's going to dry clear. So I'm going to remove the rest of this blue painter's tape gently, and then I'm going to put this piece aside to dry. You can see what that looks like. Doesn't look like much, but once it dries clear, now you can see all of those rays are shiny and beautiful, and then you've got that more subtle yellow coming in between. For my final card, I want to show you how to use the Deco Foil Transfer Gel with glitter. And this is such a fun technique, and it really contains the glitter, so the glitter doesn't rub off very easily once everything is dry, which I really like. So now I've tacked down my piece of cardstock, and I'm going to angle this Flourish stencil on its side like that, and then I'm going to tack that down with a little bit more blue painter's tape. You can reuse the pieces of blue painter's tape several times before they become too worn. But I've done so many cards with this that I needed some new pieces. So now I'm going to grab that palette knife, and I'm just going to spread that all on there. A nice thin layer again. You don't need very much for this because this is only going to grab some glitter. And once you've got it nice and smooth, return the rest of that gel into the jar. And then again, being very careful to remove the stencil so you don't disrupt the design. You don't want anything to shift. So I've just got a couple pieces of blue painter's tape here left to pull off, and I'm going to pull that stencil straight up so that I don't ruin the design. There we go. And you can see that beautiful flourish underneath. Now this flourish, when you add glitter to it, it makes beautiful wedding cards. It also will make beautiful Christmas cards. And you can also glitter in different colors too, so you're not limited to just the clear glitter like I'm using. I'm using the Gina K Designs Prismatic Glitter in the color Frozen. So this has a nice iridescent shine to it, but it's still very soft and elegant. But I can totally see this card being a Christmas card too. So you can see all of that beautiful glitter in there, and it's almost got a little bit of an opal feel to it. And right now the gel is white, but once it dries, and I'll show you in my finished card project here, once it dries clear, so really all you see then is the glitter. It's just beautiful. It almost looks like a bridal gown. And so I thought it was a perfect backdrop for a save the date card. So I hope you've enjoyed today's Stamp TV video, and I hope you'll try some of these fun new techniques. Stay tuned to Stamp TV for more videos, and thanks so much for watching.